This is activity 50, and it's about the Declaration of Independence, and in particular about what this document says about God and how God is involved in this statement of the reasons why the Americans are seeking independence. A lot of times when I talk about the Declaration in my classes, I encourage my students to, when July 4th comes around, to consider breaking it open and reading it with their friends and family or loved ones, whoever happens to be around at the barbecue or however you are celebrating it. There's a lot of good stuff in there about just understanding the American system of government. In the first paragraph of the Declaration, you'll see an important reference to God. It begins, when in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth a separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them. Then they go on to say that it's important to let the world know why we're doing this. So as I've said before, sometimes if you want to understand these old statements better, you can rearrange the word order. So you think about this in terms of that the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle the Americans to dissolve the political bands with Great Britain. It might make a little easier sense. But the point here is that the Americans are saying is that people have a right to independence, and that's a God-given right. And this will make sense, I think, if you think back to the idea that the rights of life, liberty, and property are God-given rights. And also, as you think back to our study of independence as being one of the things that protects our life, liberty, and property from government, from that government of the mother country. And so if God gives us the rights of life, liberty, and property, then it makes sense that God would also give us the right of independence, because you need independence to be secure in your life, liberty, and property. The second quotation here in letter B is just to kind of elaborate on when the Americans in the Declaration speak of the laws of nature. That's a term that would have been readily understood by the folks back then, and you can see in Blackstone here, I think as we've seen, that the law of nature simply means the laws that God has laid down for human beings to regulate our conduct and to prevent us, hopefully, from harming other people. Letter C is another example of God being mentioned in regard to rights. It says, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they're endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, etc. So, again, the idea here is that these rights come from God, and that there are some other rights that we have to defend these. One is self-government. We've noticed that the first 6 complaints of the Declaration have to do with the king interfering with our right of self-government. And you can see also, kind of by implication here, that right also is a God-given right, the right of self-government, because you need that right, again, to be secured in those God-given rights of life, liberty, and property. So another question I ask here is, what is God's attitude toward government that protects person and property? God likes that, is in favor of that, because God likes people to be secure in their person and property. Also, God would be in favor of living under a government that does not harm person and property for the same reason. So sort of what I'm building a case here for is that God is in favor of liberty, because independence, self-government, and these other meanings we've studied, constitutionally limited government by implication, because that keeps us secure in our life, liberty, and property. So at least the God of the Declaration is not indifferent toward politics. This God of which they're speaking cares very much about politics, because liberty and the right kind of political arrangements are very important when it comes to people being secure in their personal property and pursuing happiness. Whether this is accurate about God, that's something to reflect on, but it's just something you can get from studying the Declaration. In letter D, at really sort of the climax, the most crucial moment of the Declaration, there's another reference to God when after building their case, the Americans actually declare independence. We therefore, the representatives of the United States of America, solemnly publish and declare, etc., that these united colonies ought to be free and independent. There's couched in the middle of there a reference to God when it says that as they're doing this, they're appealing to the supreme judge of the world for the rectitude of their intentions. And this is an idea that may not in this time be easy to understand, but there used to be this idea that someday there would be a day of judgment, that all people would stand before God as their judge, who would reward them or punish them according to their actions. And so at this moment, they're saying, we know that someday we're going to stand before God on the day of judgment and have to answer for what we're doing as we seek independence from Great Britain. And we are confident that what we're doing is right, because we are seeking, we're doing what we're doing in self-defense to protect our God-given rights of life, liberty, property, pursuit of happiness. And not only that, but we know we're doing it, notice they say the rectitude of their intentions. Rectitude means moral rightness. And so they're asking God to even look into their hearts, and that the motives for what they're doing the right thing, are right. They're doing the right thing for the right reasons, and they're very confident of that. They're saying, so confident that they are willing to stand before God someday and answer for it. And also at the very, very end of the Declaration, there's another reference to God, where they say that for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, they mutually pledge to each other their lives, fortunes, and sacred honor. This might sound kind of strange, but they are very confident that in the contest between America and Great Britain, that God is on the side of the United States. The reason they're so confident about that is because they are certain that they are fighting for life, liberty, and property, in self-defense against Great Britain. They're fighting for liberty. Great Britain is fighting for despotism, and they know that God, or they believe that God favors liberty and those who fight for liberty. So as they embark on this war against one of the greatest power, if not the greatest power in the world, Great Britain, they are very confident that God is going to fight on their side.